What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Boombox Guru, music commentary and music discussion for music lovers. I'm your host, LB, and we got a very good episode for you guys today. So if you don't want to miss out, tune in and keep it locked in. Yo, what's good, everybody? Just want to welcome you all to another brand new episode of the Boombox Guru. I'm your host, LB. And before I begin this whole episode, man, just hope everybody out there is having a good day. It's had a good week so far. I think my week has been a bit better than it has been in previous ones. I think recently, man, I decided to really commit to something. Not going to go into too much detail about it, but I just recently decided to commit to something that, in the long run is going to be very beneficial to me. With much prayer, contemplating on it, I finally decided to just go ahead and stick with this whole commitment that I decided to take on, this whole journey I decided to take on. And I think it's really gonna be beneficial in the end. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna hit a few bumps in the road, but I think that with where I'm at now, with my mindset and where I'm at now, I think I'll be able to, easily overcome it. But enough about me. Let's get into this episode, man. So today's episode, man, I'm ranking Tupac Shakur's albums. Yes, the late great Tupac Shakur. I'm ranking his albums from 1991 to 1996. And as I'm looking on his Wikipedia page, man, it's crazy, man. Tupac only released 4 studio albums in his lifetime. Yeah, he only released 4 studio albums in his lifetime, man. And because the Machiavelli album was actually his first posthumous album, although he did have creative input on that record, but it didn't come out till about 2 or 3 months after his death. But yeah, man, he only released 4 studio albums in his lifetime. And then with recent interviews and stuff that people have been putting up on YouTube, interviewing people that knew him, that were close to him, talking about all the stuff that he done during his lifetime. It's amazing how much he was able to accomplish at just 25 years old. I mean, the dude was already a rap star, a movie star. I mean, he was making a lot of accomplishments by the time he was 25. I think about where I was at 25. I mean, man, it's just crazy, man, to see how he did so much, man. He was definitely a go-getter. He definitely was on one during his lifetime, during his period, man. But yeah, one of the most influential rappers, MCs in hip hop, especially for a lot of the artists that came out after him. And even now, there's still a lot of artists that are influenced by him, man. And his legacy just transcended past hip hop, past music in general. I think more people like Tupac the person than more so the rapper. But you can go online and you can see where there's all types of murals and stuff of him painted all over the world, man. And that's just crazy, man. He did it. He managed to attain that. I mean, of course, a lot of this came after his death, but just the impact that he managed to put within hip hop and within music in general at such a young age, man. And then on top of that, there's even college courses that talk about his lyrics. There's actually courses in college and universities, classes that discuss his lyrics and his poetry and stuff of that nature, man. So, I mean, it's just amazing to see how hip hop has really become global, how it's really solidified, and Pac came from a really, his background, man. He came from a militant background. Both of his parents were in the Black Panther Party. A lot of his family members were, black revolutionaries and such. And a lot of that was reflected in his lyrics, a lot of his subject matter on his albums. as well as in his own like personality and stuff. I always like to I always like to put Tupac, and Ice Cube, and Ice T, and others in that whole category known as revolutionary but gangster. You know what I'm saying? They were revolutionaries, man, but they had that gangster twist when it came to that style and that whole persona or whatever, man. But yeah, man. Without further ado, sit back, relax. We're gonna get into this album ranking of Tupac Shakur. So stay tuned, keep it locked in. This is the Boombox Guru. All right, man. So coming in at number 6, yeah, we got the debut album from Tupac called Tupacalypse Now, released in 1991. This came out on TNT Records or TNT Recordings and Interscope Records, man. And I think it was last year. Last year, I actually managed to snag an original CD pressing of Tupacalypse Now with the Interscope Records logo and the TNT Recordings logo. Yeah, I snagged it at a record store that I go to. But yeah, this is the debut album from Tupac, released in 1991. Man, this was when he was still, a part of the Digital Underground collective, that whole Digital Underground family. This one he was still a part of that. So the production was done by Digital Underground, by Shock G, DJ Fuse, all those, everybody that was involved in Digital Underground. This was something that they produced. This was coming off the heels of when Tupac made his first public rap appearance, his first major rap appearance, which was on the same song, the Digital Underground track, same song from This Is an EP release, as well as I can't think of the name of that movie. Is it Nothing But Trouble? It was a movie that Dan Aykroyd and Demi Moore and a bunch of them did back in the early 90s. This weird kind of comedy horror movie. But Digital Underground made an appearance in that movie, and where they played the song, same song. But yeah, that was Tupac's first major appearance on a record. But yeah, this Tupacalypse Now is coming off of this. It's coming off of this, and now even though I got this in number 6, the thing is, I don't think Tupacalypse Now is a bad album. It's actually one of my favorite Tupac records because it's very different from his later albums, because this is before you got the thugged out Tupac. This was way before Thug Life. Definitely way before Death Row. This was a different Tupac, man. This is when Pac was still more on his militant vibe, where he was more Afrocentric. He was still with the whole Black Power, Panther Power vibe. That was his whole vibe during this era, and all of that is conveyed on this record. It's a very more Afrocentric in nature, and I also dig the whole underground feel that this record has. It has a very kind of rough underground feel to it as well, man. But you can honestly say that Tupacalypse Now is arguably Pac's most political album, because a lot of the songs on here, a lot of good social commentary, especially of things that were happening at the time. You get a lot of the subject matter about police brutality, corrupt government, poverty, a lot of the subject matter that continue to be a mainstay in Tupac's lyrics and so forth, man. But some songs on here, some highlights on this album would have to be, Trapped. Trapped was actually one of the singles from the album. The first time I heard that song, though, was on the Tupac Resurrection documentary. And, of course, Trapped is about police brutality. That's what that song is about. It's Tupac telling stories about being harassed, beaten by the police and stuff of that nature. And what's really kind of crazy is that at the time, when Tupac wrote this song, he really didn't have any trouble with the police. He was actually just telling stories that his friends were telling him. But, not long after this record came out, he actually got beat up by the police in Oakland. He actually got beat up by the police. But yeah, Trap, that was one of the singles from the album. I think it might have been the second single from the record. I'm not sure. And then you got Soldier Story. Soldier Story is one of the highlights of that album, man, because Soldier Story is actually the song is actually a story about George Jackson. At least that's what the song. If I Now that I think about it, I think that's what the song was actually inspired by. It was inspired by the story of George Jackson. Definitely look him up, man. There's a book about George Jackson called Soledad Brothers. But yeah, George Jackson, man, he was a political prisoner. Yeah, he was an activist. He was a political prisoner, and he actually co-founded the Black Guerrilla Family, the prison organization. Yeah, he was one of the co-founders of that, man. But the Soldier Story actually tells a story about how, and this is actually a true story. George Jackson, he was in prison, right? And his brother and a whole gang of people, a part of a crew or whatever, they actually got into this inside the prison and took over the prison in an escape attempt in an effort to break him out of prison. Yeah, you can look it up. There was a movie, even there was a biopic that was even done about this whole story, man. Gary Dourdan actually played George Jackson in that movie. But yeah, George Jackson's younger brother and a few more people, they actually went inside the prison that he was locked up in, and they took it over in an attempt to break him out. But all of them ended up being murdered. They all ended up getting killed. So it didn't actually happen. As far as them, they didn't manage to get through with it. You know what I'm saying? They all ended up dead. But yeah, that's what Soldier Story is about. It's actually about that whole situation that took place in, I think it was 1971. Yeah. But that's a very interesting song, and there was a lot of controversy behind Soldier Story because I believe it was in Texas. This young kid, he actually shot and killed a Texas Ranger that pulled him over. And when he was brought in for questioning and everything, he actually said that what inspired him to do that was the song "A Soldier Story" from Tupacalypse Now. And Vice President Dan Quayle at the time, then Vice President Dan Quayle at the time, he really went hard on Tupac in that song. He held some type of press conference where he actually had the CD of Tupacalypse Now. He made a statement saying that this album has no place in our society and stuff like that. So that was one of Tupac's first earliest controversies that kind of brought him out there in the public eye as far as like controversy. That was one of his first major controversial issues, was that right there. And then of course, the song called "Words of Wisdom," man, that's another highlight of the song. I like the production on that song because it's got this kind of jazzy vibe to it. It's very jazzy, almost kind of tribal feel to it as well. And it's just Tupac he's just being socially conscious, man. He's talking about government corruption. He's talking about, the plight of black people in the ghetto and things of that nature. He's just really just letting out all his frustration about all the things that's happening in the world, man. And my favorite part of the song is at the end, is where he gives a shout out to like similar artists of that time. Like he gives a shout out to like Ice Cube. He gives a shout out to Paris, Public Enemy, KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions. These are all artists that were making this type of content too as well during this period, man. But that's another highlight. I listen to that song quite a bit because a lot of the stuff that he says on there, man, is still relevant to the day. And in between the verses, man, there's really no hook. There's really no hook on that song. It doesn't really have a hook. In between the verses, he goes on like these kind of monologues, these rants, basically just pretty much just venting his frustration at the corruption and everything that's going on in America. And then, of Crooked Ass Nigga is another good song on here, man. That's more of like a gangster rap type song, produced by the Live Squad and featuring Stretch, who at the time was one of Tupac's closest friends. It's not much really to go about that song, man. It's just one of those kind of typical like hardcore hip hop songs, gangster rap songs that were typical, uh, of that era. But it's one of my favorites on the album. And then of course you got Brenda's Got a Baby. Brenda's Got a Baby. That was the biggest hit from the record. One of Tupac's most recognized songs. Very touching song too. Tupac got inspired to write this song because he read in a newspaper about a teenage girl who actually threw her baby in a trash can. So that inspired him to write this whole entire song. And this is another song that doesn't really have a hook. The song is just Tupac telling the story, his version, of a young woman who is a pregnant teenager, has a baby underage. She's only like 13 years old, and she comes from a very dysfunctional family. The parents are on drugs. There's like incest involved. And now that I'm older, when I think about it, man, a lot of the stuff that he talked about in that song, is very troubling, because this is stuff that still happens today. This is nothing new. This is stuff that still continues today, man. But it's just a really touching story, man. This is a really touching story, and to think about it, it was actually a hit too. The song was actually a hit. Nowadays, a song with such serious subject matter like that, it's not gonna get played on the radio or anything like that or be a hit. But that song was actually the biggest hit from the album. And then I like the last song on here called "Part Time Mother" is another really good song. It's where Tupac they kind of flipped that whole Stevie Wonder song, "Part Time Lover," and Tupac's just telling a story about coming from about a mother who's addicted to drugs, and how that whole situation, how it affects the children and everything. Sometimes I wonder if maybe he was talking about his own mom, but I don't know if he even knew about his mother's drug addiction at the time that he did this song. He could just be telling a story of something that he heard from one of his friends, or he just heard from somebody from the hood or whatever. But it's another amazing song, and I think it's also partly inspired by the song called "Part Time Sucker" from Boogie Down Productions, because they did a song on by All Means Necessary album called "Part Time Sucker" that was maybe not the same subject matter, but it also kind of flipped the whole Stevie Wonder "Part Time Lover" track. So I think partly that was inspired by that, man. But like I said, I don't think Tupac Lives Now is a terrible album, but this was young Tupac, man. This is when he was 20 years old. So he hadn't really hit his niche yet. He hadn't really hit his peak at this point. And you can kind of tell from the lyrics, well, not the lyrics, but some, the way he flows, you can kind of tell that, this was his first album. You can tell he just doesn't, now I ain't gonna say he doesn't sound confident, but you can tell that, he hadn't really hit his stride just yet. When you listen to it, you can tell that this was his first record, and this was him, like, this was like the beginning stages of where Pop was coming from, But all around, man, I think it's one of his best albums, in my opinion. But, I don't think I couldn't really put it above any of the other ones just yet. But let's get to the next song on here. The next album. And I don't know, some of y'all might be upset about this, man. But so at number 5, man, I chose the Thug Life album, Thug Life Volume 1, released in 1994, man. I gotta be honest, personally for me, like I said, this whole album's ranking thing, this is just my opinion. But I don't know, the Thug Life album doesn't get a whole lot of replay value with me. Like, every once in a while, I'll put it in and I'll listen to it. Maybe even after I do this episode, I'll probably listen to it. I'll probably get a vibe to want to listen to it, man. But I don't really listen to this album that much. And I think it's because the record didn't really come out the way it was supposed to. It just feels very unfinished. And that's because it didn't come out how it was supposed to. They recorded, I think the original album had over 20 tracks, if I'm not mistaken, or close to it. But see, this record came out when a lot of these record labels, these major labels, they were catching a lot of heat because of gangster rap. Gangster rap had become a real controversial thing at this time. A lot of people, a lot of these record labels were catching heat, especially after the whole Ice-T Cop Killer controversy. Even though Cop Killer was not a rap song, it was a metal song. It was a thrash metal song, which was done by Ice-T's metal band Body Count. But for whatever reason, because it was Ice-T, a lot of these other record labels and artists started catching the heat too. So Interscope, they made Tupac and Thug Life cut like half the songs off. And you can find a lot of these songs on YouTube, and there's been various mixtapes that have come out that actually include the original versions of a lot of those songs. Because a lot of those songs end up getting remixed and like spread it out throughout a lot of his other posthumous albums. But for the most part, man, I mean, Thug Life, it's not bad, man. It's a solid record, man. I mean, it's very hardcore. It's very rough. It's a very raw and gritty album, which is what Tupac wanted. He wanted it to be more underground. I don't think he was looking for it to be a very mainstream record to begin with. So it definitely conveys that, everybody comes hard on this record. Everybody in the group, Pac, Mo Preem, Macadocious, Rated R, Big Psych, they all come hard. They all come hard with the lyrics. It's a pure unadulterated gangster rap album. That's just the best way to put it. And it's got 10 tracks, but within those 10 tracks, man, there's some good ones on here, man. Like the first song on the album that kicks it off, "Bury Me a G," is one of the best songs. This is a very, very smooth, kind of smooth song that you can ride to. And of course, it was one of those instances where Tupac starts predicting his death and everything that would happen later on. But that's one of my favorites on here, "Bury Me a G." Pour Out a Little Liquor, which I think was on the Above the Rim. I think it was on the Above the Rim soundtrack, which that was a movie that Tupac starred in. One of Tupac's signature roles when he played Birdie in Above the Rim. But I don't know if Pour Out a Little Liquor, I can't remember if it was on the soundtrack, but I do know it was in the movie. Because it was on that part where Marlon Wayans walks into that club and he shoots and kills Tupac's character, Birdie. Let's see, Stay True. That's another favorite one of mine. Yeah, it's got that. It's kind of got like this kind of sort of. It's a hard song, but it also has this kind of like mellow, kind of West Coast vibe to it as well. Let's see, Under Pressure. Under Pressure is another one. First time I heard that song was on the Tupac Resurrection documentary. That's another one. Street Fame is ill. Cradle to the Grave. Straight Ballin', that's a Tupac solo one right there. That's a Tupac favorite as well. That was on the Tupac Resurrection soundtrack too, man. I really like that song. Really cool, man. How Long Will They Mourn Me, featuring Nate Dogg, which that was like one of the earliest collaborations between Tupac and the Death Row Records artist before he even signed to Death Row. But for the most part, man, I think the Thug Life album is I think it's a solid album. I don't think it's that great either, but like I said, it don't get a lot of replay value for me. Every once in a while I'll pop it in. I guess when I want to hear some pure unadulterated gangster rap or whatever, that's the way to go. But yeah, there's nothing light about this record. There's nothing light about this record. I mean, the lightest songs you could get is like "Bury Me a G" and maybe "Stay True" and How Long Will They Mourn Me and Pour Out a Little Liquor. That's about it. Oh, and this is the story about How Long Will They Mourn Me. That Tupac recorded that song because I think he was in the studio one day, and some of the members of Thug Life came in there and they told him about a friend of his named Kato that got killed. He had just got killed. And they immediately did that song right there that night in the studio, and they called Nate Dogg and got him up there. They got him up there to record the hook and everything. But yeah, and Warren G actually produced that song too. Yeah, Warren G produced How Long Will They Mourn Me. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, Warren G actually produced that song. But yeah, like I said, man, it's just like I said, man, it's a pure unadulterated gangster. It's one of I think it's one of the hardest gangster rap albums that ever come out in the '90s, man. So if you're looking for some hard gangster rap, man, definitely pick up that Thug Life album. Unfortunately, man, they didn't never get around to record a volume two. I don't even know if they even had tracks ready for a volume two. But I do remember uh the Thug Life album actually used to come with different. It used to come with different color cover art, like the most well known cover art is the black and white one that says Thug Life. But I remember a long time ago, I seen one that was like green and white. I seen one that was green and white, and I thought that might have been like volume two or something like that. But nah, they never did record a volume two. They didn't get around to it. So I guess that might have just been a rare version that I came across, or I could just be making that up. Maybe I dreamed that or something. I don't know. But yeah, man, that's like I said, man. It's not a bad album. It's pretty solid, but for me, it just doesn't get a whole lot of replay value, because I feel like if the record had came out the way it was supposed to, it would have been a whole lot better. Because there's a lot of songs, a lot of great songs that got recorded for this album that didn't make it because of the whole criticism that was going on behind gangster rap. Because there's actually a song called "Running from the Police" that was recorded for this record that featured the Notorious B.I.G. And I think it was like right before he blew up with his own solo career. Yeah, there's a few songs that were recorded for this record that didn't make it, man. But anyway, man, we gonna get to the next. We're gonna get to the next album. That was number 5, so we're gonna get to number 6. I mean, not number 6, but number 4. And this is Strictly for My Niggas, released in 1993. Now, this is Tupac's second solo album. This is his second solo album, and this is the record that put Tupac on the map. This was his breakthrough album because it featured two of his biggest hits, "I Get Around" and "Keep Your Head Up." Those have become signature Tupac songs. Everybody knows those songs. And this right here, this was the beginning. This was the beginning of Tupac becoming more aggressive and more hardcore with his style. Like I said, on Tupacalypse Now, that record was more like socially conscious, more Afrocentric in nature. It actually had more of kind of an East Coast vibe, more akin to what like Public Enemy and Boogie Down Productions were doing out there in New York. And, of course, you have to understand that Tupac he was originally from New York City. Even though he claimed the West Coast and the West Side, he was originally from New York City. He didn't actually move to California until he was 17 years old in 1988. But anyway, though, Tupacalypse Now was more Afrocentric, more in vein of what a lot of the more politically minded and socially conscious East Coast artists was doing. But to me, right here, Strictly for My Niggas, man, this is where he hit his stride. And this is where he managed to take that revolutionary part of him and blend it with that gangster image or that gangster style. Now, a lot of people say that when Tupac did this record, he just come off of doing the movie Juice, which was his first major film role, playing the character of a bishop. And a lot of people were saying that he was trying to live up to that character of bishop, but from interviews and stuff that I've watched from people that knew Pac, he was always kind of like aggressive and turned up. He was turned up before there was even a term, turned up. He was always just aggressive and whatever, and he always had guns and things of that nature, even before then. I just think with this record, Pac saw a niche. I think he seen what artists like Cube and Ice-T were managing to do. They were managing to be politically minded with their lyrics, but they also gave it a gangster twist to appeal to the hood, to appeal to the streets. And I think Pac picked up on that, and he took it and ran with it as well, and he ended up being very successful with that. But yeah, strictly for my niggas is a way more harder and way more aggressive album than Tupacalypse Now was. This is where Pac really started to really come into his own, and he was also a lot more angrier on this record because this album right here was his response to a lot of the criticism he received after his first record, especially with Dan Quayle. And like if you remember on the first Tupac album, I told you about the controversy surrounding that song "A Soldier's Story" and how Dan Quayle, then vice president, how he like went on the attack towards Tupac and stuff of that nature. So on this album, Tupac, he like responds to Dan Quayle in several songs throughout the album. He's like taking shots and blatantly dissing Dan Quayle on several different songs on this record, man. He's calling Dan Quayle out and everything like that. That's, to me, I think that's pretty bold. That's pretty bold, hip hop artists actually calling out the then vice president of the United States. But yeah, there's several songs where he takes like little shots at Dan Quayle, man. But like I said, man, this strictly for my niggas, man. This was Pac's breakthrough record. This is what made him into a star. It was the beginning of that. He was already becoming a movie star, but this is the album that really kind of put him in that place. It put him in the top echelon of hip hop artists of the 90s. People really started to pay attention when this record dropped. So some of my favorite songs on here, besides the two singles, man, I Get Around and Keep Your Head Up. Well, let me talk about them first. I Get Around. That song was actually originally a digital underground song. That actually was a digital underground song, and the group didn't really know what to do with that song. They were like riding around with the beat for days and days, and they gave the song to different members of the collective and the affiliates. They kind of let the song float around for a bit, and then Tupac heard the song and he wanted it. Well, what happened was when the first single to come off of Strictly for My Niggas was actually the first track on the album called Holla If You Hear Me. Holla If You Hear Me is a hardcore hip hop song. Very aggressive, very political. The video was very like dark and it's very dark and violent. That was the first single produced by the Live Squad. And when Tupac put that single out, Strictly for My Niggas was actually starting to do the same thing that Tupacalypse Now did. It wasn't doing very well. The album was kind of tanking and falling in the charts. And Money B is the one that told him that, I Get Around should be the single. Money B actually wanted Tupac they actually told him to put that song out first, but he wouldn't do it. He wanted to put out Holla If You Hear Me as a favor to Stretch, who produced that song. But yeah, I Get Around, this is where Tupac really started to, that's where he really started to build up his female fan base. This is when the ladies really started to like Tupac. Well, the ladies already liked him, but I'm just saying, as far as like, when he came out with this song, this is where his female fan base really started to really develop. More the ladies really started to like him. You check out the video. Everybody knows the video. The video, they shot this video, this big beautiful house there at the pool and everything, having a good time. But yeah, this is he walking around shirtless and everything like that. He's fit and stuff like that. So this is where the ladies really started to really dig Tupac a lot more, man. Then you got Keep Your Head Up, another signature Tupac song where it's more of a women empowerment song. He's telling ladies to be strong and to keep their head up in spite of the adversities and stuff of that nature, man. And it's been a signature Tupac song, man. Everybody knows that track, man. He's talking about how how strong women are, and how he's just giving it up to the ladies on this song in a very positive way. And let's see, what's some other songs on here? Oh yeah, I gotta talk about Last Words. One of my favorite Tupac songs of all time, and I'm gonna tell you why, because it's the only collaboration that he did with Ice Cube and Ice-T. as far as publicly. Like, I don't know if they might have recorded other songs that never got released, but man, Tupac, Ice Cube, and Ice-T on one song. I remember when I first bought this, my mom first bought me this CD. She bought it for me for Christmas one year, man. And I heard Ice-T and Ice Cube. I was like, whoa, I never knew Tupac did a song with Ice Cube and Ice-T. I was just blown away, man. That's one of the best songs on the record, man. All three of them dudes on one song. And you gotta understand, they all kind of like in a similar vein, man. They got that whole revolutionary but gangster style, man. All of them on this one track together. Everybody's verse is lit, man. But I gotta tell you, out of all three of their verses, man, I think Ice-T had the standout verse, man. Ice-T really killed it, man. His flow and his whole delivery on that record, on that song, was just ill, man. If you ain't never heard Last Words, go on YouTube right now and check out that song Last Words featuring Ice Cube and Ice-T. That, man, it makes me wish that Tupac, Ice-T, and Ice Cube had did more songs, you know, back in the day, man. And what's so ill about it, man, because I kind of feel like that was them kind of I don't know if I want to say passing the torch, but it was kind of like them like giving Tupac giving him like props, man, because he was still kind of like the new kid. He was still kind of like the new kid on the block. I mean, you know, Cube and Ice-T were already practically veterans at this point. To me, it was like they was just kind of like giving it up to him, giving his props. Like, yeah, this dude is about to be the one now, which he ended up being. I would say you could arguably say he ended up being bigger than both of them for up until his untimely death, man. But yeah, when I first heard that song, I was like, oh man, he got Cube and Ice-T on this song. Like, imagine if they had did a record together. Imagine if all three of them had did a record together back then, man. That'd probably been the illest thing ever. Let's see, what's another song on here, man? Guess Who's Back is a dope one. I like Representing 93, man. Especially that, I think it's the second verse, where he starts name dropping all the popular artists in hip hop music during that time. He name drops TLC, E40, Too Short, Cypress Hill, Naughty by Nature. Anybody whoever was on top in 1993 during that period, man, he was name dropping them on that song. And then the title track, Strictly for My Niggas, is ill too, man. I like that song, man, because it's eerie. It's very dark and eerie and haunting. It's got this kind of menacing vibe to it. It almost sounds like something that you would hear from like a horrorcore artist or something like that, man. But it's definitely the dopest. It's definitely one of the dopest songs on there. Let's see, Five Deadly Venoms, man. That features Tretch from 90 by Nature and Apache. All of them are from the Flavor Unit crew. And we all know that Tretch and Pac were real close friends. And let's see here, man. The Streets of Death Row is a dope one. Point the Finger. Point the Finger, that's one of the main songs where Pac was like responding to a lot of his critics. You know, people were trying to blame him for a lot of stuff, and he was like, in that song, he was pretty much responding back to them. But yes, yeah, Pac, man, like I said, man, this was the beginning of Pac really going the more thugged out route, man. But he was angry at this part. He was angry at this time though, man, because he was, Dan Quayle was on him, and then like a lot of people from his old neighborhood out there in Marin City, man, they were blaming him for that incident that happened where a shootout took place between some guys and Tupac's guys. And unfortunately and sadly, a 7-year-old kid ended up getting hit by a stray bullet and got killed. So a lot of the people from there were like really going at Pac about that. And there was a lot of stuff that was going on. And, you could say that this album in a lot of ways was Tupac's response to a lot of the stuff that was happening around him at that time. But like I said, this was his breakthrough record. This was the one where he hit his stride and he just took off from there. He just kept going and going and going. All right, man. So that was number 4, I believe. Yeah, that was number 4. So we're going to get to number 3. I don't know how y'all going to feel about this, man, but hey, it is what it is. So at number 3, man, I got All Eyes on Me. I got All Eyes on Me at number 3. Okay, so this was Tupac's first album on Death Row Records, man. And we all know the history, man. In between that time, Pac Pac was in prison, but we'll elaborate on that more when we get to that album. But this was Tupac fresh out of jail. He owned Death Row. Death Row Records at the time was huge, biggest rap label in the world. At that point, Snoop Dogg was on the label. You know, they was taking off, man. But you know, it was really when Pac got on the label. It was really when Pac got on the label where they really started making that money and they really started getting that attention, man. 96 was a real good year. And at the same time, it was a bad year for Death Row. But, you know, All Eyes on Me, 2-disc album. It's considered the first double album in hip hop, but that's actually not true. It's probably the first double album by a solo artist in hip hop, but the actual first double album in hip hop was actually the Down South Hustlers album, compilation album that Master P did back in 95. That was actually the first double album in hip hop, but All Eyes on Me was you could say it was the first double album by a solo artist, man. But man, a really really good album, man. I think the only reason why I don't have it higher is because a lot of the songs on here are kind of overplayed now. And I'm not trying to take nothing away from it, man. You know, How Do You Want? I mean, you know, it's got How Do You Want It, you know, two of America's Most Wanted, I can still knock, man. Let's see what else. You know, I Ain't Mad at You, I still enjoy. So, I don't know, maybe not overplayed, man, but I don't know. How many times, I don't know, California Love, I mean, it's a good song, man, but I don't know if I want to hear it too much anymore. I mean, because I've heard it so many times. I mean, I think I just prefer the remix that's on this record. And that, but I can still definitely listen to Two America's Most Wanted, man, featuring Snoop. And I really thought that was a dope collaboration, man, between him and Snoop. Because at the time, both Snoop and Pac were going through legal situations. You know, Snoop had just got off that murder case that he beaten, but he still was entangled in legal things and stuff like that. But definitely a dope song produced by Daz. All About You. The album opener, Ambitions as a Rider, man. Where they sampled that Pee Wee Herman by, what's his name? I can't think of the artist's name that made that song. He made a song called the Pee Wee Herman back in the late 80s. But they sampled that. And come on, that whole hook, I can't deny it. I'm a straight rider. You don't wanna F with me. That how many people have like redone that line, interpreted that line? I mean, Fabulous did it famously when he did that song Can't Deny It, which featured Nate Dogg on the hook. You know, Fabulous did it famously when he came out with his first big hit, Can't Deny It. And that so many people have like interpreted that whole hook, man. It's one of the best album openers too, man, because anytime you hear that beat, that doom 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 doom, you already know what it is. So definitely a great album opener. All About You, another fan favorite. Scandalous is probably my favorite, man. That was a real good one, man. Very smooth and jazzy feel to it. That yeah, a lot of good songs on here, man. Only God Can Judge Me. That was the first time I ever heard Rapping Forte. Was on Only God Can Judge Me. But yeah, a lot of great songs. Trading War Stories featuring Sibo. First time I ever heard Sibo. That's a dope track. I kind of like the vibe of that song. It kind of has kind of an East Coast vibe to it a little bit. But everybody trading war stories about all the struggles and all the hardships and stuff that they've been through in their life, man. But the second disc is actually the best disc, man. The second disc is the one that has more of the deeper cuts. You know, a great kickoff on the album is Can't See Me, featuring George Clinton. Cause I remember, I don't know why, but every time I heard when I used to hear Can't See Me, I used to think that was Snoop Dogg's What's My Name when I was a kid. I used to always think that was Snoop Dogg's What's My Name about to come on, but it would be Tupac. I kind of be thrown off when I would hear Tupac's voice come on, like, huh? But yeah, Can't See Me is a dope opener to this too, man. Very G-Funk inspired track featuring none other than George Clinton. Shorty Wanna Be a Thug. Man, holla if you hear me, holla at me. Holla at me is really cool. It's a wonder why they call you bitch, which is another fan favorite. Man, Thug Passion, Picture Me Rolling. The title track, All Eyes on Me, Run the Streets. We got Michelle A on the hook. Ain't Hard to Find is another favorite. That's a posse cut, man. E40, Be Legit, Richie Rich, D Shot, Sibo. I mean, the whole Northern California is on that song, man. The whole Northern California, well, not the whole Northern California, but but a lot of heavy hitters from Northern California is on that song. And I think Spice One was originally supposed to be on that song, but I think he ended up getting locked up in jail or something. He didn't make it on the album. But yeah, All Eyes on Me, man. I don't know, man. It's a whole lot that I can say about this album, but I can't say nothing that hadn't already been said. You know, it's considered Tupac's uh magnum opus in a lot of ways. His quintessential album. You know, it's his most popular album, his best selling record. You know, everybody knows the hits from the record. California Love, How Do You Want It, I Ain't Mad at You. Huge hits. Still mainstays on the radio, I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't listen to radio that much. But a lot of heavy hitting songs on this record, man. A lot of heavy hitting songs on this record. But, you know, the reason I put it in number 3, though, because, you know, even though I think it's a good sounding album, and I like the more celebratory vibe that Tupac had on there, man. I just think that, I don't know. I don't like it as much as I like the other records. You know, it's not really my favorite Tupac album. It used to be, but as I got older and I started digging more into the other albums, it kind of fell down in my ranks. But anyway, man, I got it at number 3, and it's a legendary record. It's a legendary record, man. You know, the first double album in by a solo artist in hip hop. You know, it's got a lot of great songs that are still like pop cultural classics now. But it's definitely one of the highlights of Pac's career, man. And he really did his thing on there. It took him to it took him to the next level. Although he didn't get to really enjoy it too long, though. All right, so the next album. So at number 2, man, we got the Machiavelli album, the Don Illuminati, the 7 Day Theory. So this was Tupac's. You could say this was his first posthumous album, because it came out, I think, about 2 or 3 months after his death. But most fans don't really consider the Machiavelli album to be a true posthumous album, because Tupac actually had creative input on this record. Everything from the cover art to the songs that got put on the record to the production, the mixing. Everything that went into making this album, Pac actually had creative input. He was there to see it through. He just didn't get to see it get released. But yeah, this record, I think what I like about this record is that it's a good blend of where Tupac was at that time. I mean, it's a dark album. It's a darker record, because you got to understand, during the recording of this record, there was a lot going on. You know, the whole East and West thing, the East versus West thing was going down. It was a lot of stuff going on. Like, you know, Pac just, he wasn't in the best place in his life, honestly. You know, it was just a lot of stuff going on at this time. And of course, he ended up dying not too long after the recording of the record. He didn't get to see it release and stuff of that nature. I don't know, it's a bit of a dark record in a lot of ways, and it's kind of sad too, because you know, like, he died like not long after the recording. You know, the whole Vegas incident happened, and he ended up getting murdered not long after that. And in a lot of ways, when you listen to this record, you can it's kind of like a foreshadowing of what was going to happen if you listen to the record, man. It's like, dang, because it was just so much going on, and I would have to say that this was probably Pac's angriest record. It was his angriest record, man, because he kind of took this album and used it as the opportunity to kind of get back at a lot of people that mistreated him and wronged him during his whole prison stint. People that he felt that turned their back on him and stuff of like that nature. Because one of the illest songs on the album is Against All Odds. I think that's one of the realest diss songs of all time, because he's actually going at people. He's not just going at rappers, man. He's going at like really real street people. Like he's going at the people who allegedly had him shot and robbed at Quad Studios in '94 and stuff of that nature, man. I don't know. He's just really letting it all out on that record, man. Like it's almost like when he was recording it, man. It's like he. I don't know. You don't really know a dead man's perspective, man. But it's almost like, maybe he felt like, maybe he better get it all out now because he may not get that next opportunity or whatever. But he just let it all loose on that record. I mean, he's really talking about real street dudes on this record. He's not talking about no rappers. He's talking about real street cats. But that's one of the biggest highlights on the record, in my opinion. And then, of course, you got the biggest song from the record, Hail Mary. Everybody knows Hail Mary. That's probably a lot of people's favorite Tupac song. One of the illest punchlines in the history of hip hop. Then To Live and Die in L.A., California Love Part 2, another ode to Los Angeles. I really dig how Tupac, you could tell that he really loved living in Los Angeles, man. And how he gave a shout out to a lot of the neighborhoods in Los Angeles. You could tell that he was really versed in that culture, in that Los Angeles culture, man. And when you listen to that song, even though Tupac wasn't really from LA, when you listen to the song and the way he's describing a lot of the culture and environment around there, man, you can just close your eyes and you can kind of imagine being there. And him, like, maybe it's almost like him giving you a tour guide to the real Los Angeles in a lot of ways when you listen to Live and Die in LA, man. But a lot of great songs on here, man. And I would say, and the reason why I said that this album was like a good blend of where Tupac was and where he was going is because he also starts to return back to that more political mindset that he had like on the first record, like on the first Tupac album. But this time, he's a lot more angrier and a lot more militant. He's a lot more militant on this record too, man. And songs like White Man's World and stuff like that, and Hold Your Head. And another highlight on here is Crazy, the song called Crazy, which was between him, which featured Badass from the LBC crew. R.I.P. to Badass. He passed away. I think it was last year Badass passed away. Or it might have been towards the end of 2019. I forget. Yeah. No, it had to be last year. Yeah, it was last year. Yeah, Badass. He passed away, so R.I.P. to him. But he got on that song because that song was actually supposed to have like the Outlaws on it, but they were taking too long with their verses. And Badass was in the studio, and Tupac asked him, like, "You got something for this?" And he did. He went. He wrote down his rhymes and went in the studio and busted. And he ended up being on that song. And his verse is actually one of the highlights on the other album. So a lot of good songs on here, man. Me and My Girlfriend, which was inspired by Nas, even though him and Nas were kind of somewhat beefing at that time. Tupac was a big fan of Nas's It Was Written album. And there was a song on there called I Gave You Power, where Nas is rapping from the perspective of a gun. And that song is what inspired Tupac to do Me and My Girlfriend. Because if you're not really listening to the lyrics, you think that Tupac is actually talking about an actual woman. But no, he's actually talking about a gun. That's what he's talking about. He's actually talking about a gun. So, and of course, you could say Jay-Z and Beyonce they sort of kind of remade this song, like back in 2003, that '03 Bonnie and Clyde. You could say they kind of remade that song a little bit, although I think their song was more about them being in love with each other or whatever. Yeah, you could say Jay-Z and Beyonce kind of remade that song, but it's got a different subject matter. But yeah, man, it's definitely a dope album, and like I said, most people don't really consider it to be a true posthumous album because Tupac actually had creative input on the record, but it was the first album to come out after his death. But yeah, man, it's really good though. It's a really good album, man. The only thing is that when you listen to it, man, you kind of it's very dark and angry, man. So you can kind of tell that Pac wasn't really in the best place when he recorded that record. You could tell that he really had a lot of weight on his shoulders when he recorded it. And then of course, man, like I said, he died right before the record even came out. So it is what it is, man. But it's still a great record, man. So now we get to the number one album on my rank list. And y'all already know what this album is. It's the only album I haven't talked about yet. And that's Me Against the World, man. Released in 1995. Now this, in my opinion, this is Tupac's most introspective record, man. He really got personal on this record, man, because once again, man, he was going through a lot at this time. He had just got shot and robbed at Quad Studios. And then he got that whole sexual assault case put on him. Where the woman accused him of rape or whatever. Him and some dudes allegedly raped her in a hotel and stuff of that nature. And then he ended up going to prison, going to jail, during the recording of the record. So a lot of that pain and a lot of that frustration and anger that Pac was dealing with at that time, it came out on this record, but it didn't really come out in an angry way. It came out more as in like I said, it's an introspective album. It's probably Pac's most introspective work, but it's more of like a reflective nature as opposed to being angry. Like the Machiavelli album, a lot of that was anger, a lot of that was aggression and anger, man. But this, Me Against the World, is more like reflective in a lot of ways. It's almost like Pac was like kind of just, you could say he was like just sitting around and contemplating and really trying to comprehend and really understand what everything was going on around him at that time, man. Because it was a lot, man. But this album's got one of my favorite Pac songs, So Many Tears, man. Which I used to hear that on the radio all the time back in the day when it first came out. And I remember seeing the video a few times too back then. I used to wonder why Pac wasn't in the video at that, at that moment. I was a kid. I didn't understand everything that was going on at that point. But a lot of good songs on here, man. Me Against the World, the title track, which that was actually on the Bad Boys soundtrack, the first Bad Boys movie. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. It was on that soundtrack. And then you got Temptations, which is, one of those smooth, like, hip-hop R&B songs, man. A real cool video to that one. Easy Mo B produced that song, man. I really like the boom bap-ish kind of jazzy feel that record got, man. It's real ill. It's real ill, man. And I like how they used it. I like how they flipped that Eric Sermon sample. Yeah, they flipped that Eric Sermon sample from his verse on I can't think of the name of that Redman song that he did on Redman's first album. But that hey, yeah, that's an Eric Sermon sample. That's Eric Sermon, but Easy Mo B sampled that and made it a part of the song, man. I thought that was real ill. It really gave that song a different kind of flavor, man. But I like the really smooth, kind of dark, jazzy but sensual feel that song gives off, man. Cause it's more of like a romantic song in a lot of ways. It's not like a sappy, mushy romantic type song, but I don't know. It's just got a real, like, really cool vibe to it, man. But it's dark, but it's cool at the same time. If you catch my drift, but let's see. Oh man, Lord Knows is a dope song. Lord Knows is a dope song. Like that song right there is also kind of sad too, man, because it's another one of them songs where Tupac, you can kind of tell that he's just kind of venting out his frustrations of what he's dealing with and how he's feeling at the time with all this stuff that's going on around him. He's even like kind of contemplating suicide on this song. Because there's a line that he keeps repeating through the song where he says, "If I wasn't high, I'd probably try to blow my brains out," and stuff of that nature, man. So, a lot of, man, that's a lot to deal with, I guess, man. But yeah, man, but it's still a good song, man, because he talks about a lot of stuff, man. He talks about like seeing homies being dead, getting killed in front of him and stuff like that nature. It's a good song. It's sad, but it's also really good, man. I think that's what makes it good, is that it really invokes a lot of that pain and stuff that he was really going through at the time, man. And then of course it's the biggest hit from this album, Dear Mama, which has become a Tupac staple. Another one of his signature songs. Like, you gotta understand, when this came out, man, there wasn't a lot of rappers that was making songs about their mama, dedicated to their mama, man. So excuse me, yeah, Pac was one of the first ones to really do that, to make songs dedicated to their mothers and stuff of that nature. And which, in a lot of ways, I kind of feel like that's something that Master P kind of peeped at, and that influenced him to do that. Because if you listen to a lot of those No Limit albums, man, almost every No Limit album has a mama song, a song dedicated to the mama or something like that. But yeah, Dear Mama, another signature song. And a song that's transcended, man, because a lot of people like that song. Like, a lot of grown people, a lot of older adults who probably really didn't care for, like, a lot of that gangster rap or hip-hop, even like Dear Mama, man. But let's see, Death Around the Corner, man. First time I heard Death Around the Corner was on the Tupac Resurrection soundtrack. That's another ill song. Then the last song called Outlaw, which that's a real dope song. I remember first time I heard that was it was a long time ago, man. It was yeah, my mom, man. Me and her, we was at her best friend's house one time, and her best friend's son. We was playing the Xbox. This is when Xbox first came out, and I remember he had a lot of the Me Against the World songs, like on the Xbox, and we would be listening to a lot of those songs. He had this basketball video game where you could, like, play your end game, the songs that you have on your Xbox. You could play them within the video game. And he was playing a lot of the Tupac Me Against the World songs. And I remember Outlaw was one that kept like coming up, within the game and stuff like that, man. But first time I heard, that's a real dope song too, man. I think the Outlaws, which were known as Dramacidal at the time, I think they came real hard on that one. But yeah, Me Against the World, man. Honestly, man, I feel like this is Tupac's best one. I think that's his best record. A lot of people consider it to be his best album, and I think it's just I think it's one of his most introspective albums, and he really came hard on. He really did a good job in evoking a lot of the emotion and the pain and stuff that he was going through at the time. So that's why I had to put it at number one. But yeah, man, I hope you all enjoyed this Tupac ranking video. It ran kind of longer than I usually wanted to, but I'm a Tupac fan, and I just had to really elaborate and go in on a lot of these songs, man. So I apologize if this episode is a little too long for you, but hey, I think it was worth it, man. He's one of my favorite artists, and so I hope you guys will enjoy this episode and maybe peep out some of these albums or whatever if you not that familiar with Tupac's music. But RIP to Tupac. This is the Boombox Guru. As always, everybody stay blessed and be safe out there. Peace. What's good, everybody? Hope you enjoyed this new episode of the Boombox Guru. And if you did enjoy this episode, I want you guys to do me a favor. I want you to follow me on Spotify at the Boombox Guru. Check it out on Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public. You can also follow my Instagram page at the Boombox Guru. You can also like my page on Facebook, known as the Boombox Guru. Just go ahead and check me out. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell anybody that you know that might be interested in this type of content about the Boombox Guru. And as always, hope everyone has a lovely day and be blessed.